Today's topic kind of cracks me up. Today's topic is mindfulness, chapter 4 in our book. And it is funny because Nadine and I spent 2 years learning how to teach mindfulness, but we're going to talk about it in the next 15 minutes. It's such a rich topic. There's always a new angle to explore. And today I'm going to share a framework, a Buddhist framework, and a metaphor that I find very helpful. Because it's such a rich topic, we can really come at it from so many different angles. In fact, if you're familiar with, forgetting which country it's from, but they talk about the 84,000 Dharma gates. So you've got a lot of opportunities. You have to find the one that fits for you. But I'll start with a story that I have shared before, but it kind of bears repeating. It's one of those moments that I'm sure everyone can relate to. And it's the moment when I first had a conscious awareness of mindfulness. This maybe isn't everyone's experience, but in my case, I was lucky enough that I had an actual moment when I remember first being mindful. I said, I'm aware that I'm mindful right now. And so what the circumstances around this moment were, I was in my basement at the time. I wasn't feeling great mentally, and my family was upstairs. I had my sons were 8 and 10. I had been working a very high-stress job at a big firm downtown. I was living my best life. And my father had just died the year before. And I was under a lot of stress, just kind of chronic stress. And I was kicking it, and at some point, suddenly the internal system switched over from like that stress mode into depression mode. And I understand now that that's that's not unusual, because you're in this heightened state of reactivity, and your body just at some point needs some rest. And so I dropped into this pretty significant depression, like really unable to do anything. You know, my poor husband, he kind of held up our family for a period of time. And, you know, you go to the doctors and they give you a lot of different things. And I had been trying different things, and it wasn't the first time it happened in my life, so it was kind of something I sort of recognized, although it didn't make me fear it any less. And a friend recommended a book, Mindfulness, I think it's Mindfulness, The Mindful Way Through Depression, something like that. It's a great title if you're interested. I have it here. And I remember doing one of the meditations. So I'm sitting in my basement, and you know, when you have, I don't know if you've been depressed, I'm sure some of you are familiar with it, you tend to ruminate a lot on very dark thoughts. It's really quite horrible, and you don't feel like there's a way out. Your mind just keeps cooking and cooking and cooking. And the instruction was to sit and to follow this meditation where you're really putting your attention into your hands. Just sensing, you know, your fingers and your whatever. And I remember that moment so vividly, because for the first time it had been weeks at that point, like my mind was actually doing something not troubling. It was just sitting there paying attention to something very ordinary. It was in the present moment at long last. It was like, I think I was basically tiring myself out. I was exhausted, and here was this little moment where I was free from that. And it was like a little light bulb went off in my head, like, wait a minute, this is something. So I want to share that just because we do have these moments. Now we're all here, we're practitioners. We know how to walk through the day and sip from this cup of mindfulness, like take little drinks. But it bears further investigation. We know how to do it, and yet it's so easy to forget. It's so simple to do it, and it's so easy to forget to do it. It's easy to forget to come back. And it's also a little bit more, it's also a lot more involved than just sort of being in the present moment here. There's a lot more involved. And so there's a framework that I want to share with you from the Buddhist canon. And this is the Satipatthana Sutta, which we've discussed here before. I'm going to read a short piece from a book written by Bhikkhu Analayo, who's a really brilliant but kind of a dry writer. I love the book, but it's kind of dry reading. But I'm going to read a section of it for you. And the way the Satipatthana Sutta is broken down is as following. So the Satipatthana Sutta is a guide to mindfulness. It's like the ultimate Buddhist guide to mindfulness. Like, here's what you have to be mindful of. And they break it down into the four foundations of mindfulness. And the framework is, I'll say it now and I'll repeat it later when I share this metaphor that I find so helpful to think about it. The framework is mindful, number one, mindful of body. Number two, mindful of feelings. Number three, mindful of mind. And number four, mindful of dhammas, which is phenomena. And I'll explain that in a minute. So we have this framework. We're not just mindful of drinking water. I mean, we are, but then there's these other layers to it. And I want to. So I'm sort of getting ahead of myself, but what I first want to just mention, because it was so helpful. Bhikkhu Analayo says mindfulness can be understood by knowing what it's not. So knowing its opposite. And the Buddha often presented teachings such as, if you want to know what something is, know what it's not. Like, if you want to know what happiness is, know what sadness is. Or if you want to know what being sated is, try going hungry. So he speaks of mindfulness as follows. He says, distractions during mindful meditation practice often involve some memory of the past. It is a common experience to sit down with the firm intention to be mindful, only to find that sooner or later the mind has wandered off into some past event. The arising of such memories is clearly a case of loss of mindfulness, remembering something that's been done or said long ago. Mindfulness can also be lost when we imagine something taking place in the future. Although it doesn't involve remembering, it still concerns aspects of memory, like the working memory kind of projected into the future. So basically what he's saying is, if you appreciate when you're meditating and your mind goes off into the past, and when it goes into the future, you can feel that difference when it comes back into present moment awareness. You can actually sense when you're meditating, when that moment happens. And I hope you do when I'm guiding you. So let's just look at the four foundations of mindfulness again. So I thought about this in terms of a metaphor of a house. And I find this is very helpful for me. It's helpful to have a mnemonic to remember what matters. And so the four foundations of mindfulness that we need to attune to are mindfulness of body, mindfulness of feelings, mindfulness of mind, and mindfulness of phenomena. And I like to think of this in terms of a house. I've said before that your true home is actually like right here. It's not the house we're living in. It's not the apartment. It's ourselves. That's our true home. And so when we're thinking about how to be mindful, how to engage with the world mindfully, we can think about it as follows. The mindfulness of body is the structure of the house. So maybe imagine yourself like you have a house for yourself, like it's in your favorite town, maybe the yard is a certain way, maybe there's trees around it, a porch. Maybe be really good to yourself. Get yourself a beautiful home to abide in. So thinking about your experience as this house. The house itself, the structure itself, we'll call that the body, okay? And you're inside of your house, right? And you have these windows where you can look out. We have these windows where we can see things, we can hear things. And maybe these windows are like the five senses. Maybe it's like your where the world sort of comes into you. In the Buddhist understanding of phenomena, we have these moments of contact. Like we're sitting here, we have an ear, there's somebody talking, and when that sound wave hits the ear, our consciousness responds. Now we know, we have consciousness of sound. So we have these points of contact. So maybe these windows in our house are like these moments where the stimulus from our life gets into the organism. And I think what I'd like to say is that when we're moving through life, we can always close the door. We can shut the shades. This is very important, especially when the environment is stormy or overstimulating. So we have that capacity as well with this house. So mindfulness of body is the first of the four foundations. Second would be mindfulness of feelings. And maybe we can look at mindfulness of feelings as visitors coming through the front door and staying a little bit longer and stirring us in a certain way, whether it's making us upset or making us happy, making us feel safe. So we have these visitors who come through the front door. And the visitors who come, in the Buddhist canon, we're really they instruct us to think about things as being pleasant or unpleasant. When we have a feeling, the instruction is less to kind of go down the rabbit hole on the nuances of what we're feeling, but later to do that maybe, but to just register whether it's pleasant or unpleasant and to know it as being pleasant or unpleasant, because that's so instructional. So we have these visitors come in the front door and we see, how do these visitors act on us? Now, unlike real visitors, we can't just kick out our feelings, unfortunately. That's for a later conversation. The third foundation of mindfulness of mind. Thinking about that as the attic. thinking about the mind as the attic, because it's physically, we associate our mind with being up here. And I think it's very similar to an attic. We often, we can get really stuck in our mind. It's kind of like being not aware of the rest of the house. Like we can feel sometimes like that's where the whole everything that matters is happening up there, but in fact that's literally just the attic portion. And it can be dark and dusty and forgotten about. Like we take it for granted so much. In fact, when there's a storm, you do not shelter in the attic. You come down to the body. When there's strong emotions, we come back to our physical experience as a way to then engage more safely. And the attic needs to be cleaned out as well. It needs to be aired out. The windows need to be opened. And how do we do that? We sit in meditation and we ground ourselves in our body. And we breathe and we let that air come through. And then lastly, the fourth foundation of mindfulness is dhammas, which is phenomena, which is the world outside. And this is all the events that happen in life. It all happens around us. It doesn't happen to us. We have this capacity to stay grounded, to stay protected by tending to the house carefully. So that's kind of a metaphor I wanted to share today. I'm just noticing the time and basically just knowing that there are these four buckets to organize, to structure our experience with the world. Knowing that we have these different faculties as human beings and that we have to have awareness of each of them. We have to continually cultivate mindfulness of the body. Number one, first and foremost, the body goes first for a reason, because our body is the most sensitive organism to the world around us. And then aware of our feelings, aware of how we're feeling throughout the day. How am I feeling now? What about now? Knowing that just knowing is 70% of our work. How am I feeling now? And then mindfulness of mind, identifying thoughts as objects, not thoughts as us. Just because I'm having a thought does not mean that it is all that I am. It's an object that is passing through. Mindfulness of mind, thoughts as objects. And then lastly, the dhammas, the phenomena of the whole universe. It's always going on everywhere, so much that it's inconceivably vast. But this little organism right here, we have awareness of a small portion of it, and that's our work, is to be aware of what we're interacting with, of the dhammas in the world, the phenomena of the world. This little portion around this droplet in the ocean, how is this being affected? I'm going to leave it there and open up to questions, and I'll say a blessing at 11:30.